Perfect. Well, hello, good morning, afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another Orco Devs. The plan for today is pretty packed because we want to actually start the Amsterdam scoping discussions. So for that reason, I'll today be a bit more opinionated and a bit more strict with time boxing for individual points. If you feel like I'm getting anything wrong, just feel free to jump in and we can assess. But I'll just err on the side of being more opinionated today. To start with, though, we have a few quick Fusaka points to get through. I think we wanted to start with some testnet updates. Barnabas, do you want to give a quick update?
Sure. So yesterday we have BPO1 activated on Hoodie, and next week we're going to have BPO2, which is the final BPO before we hit mainnet. During the BPO fork transition, there seemed to have no bug, but later on and early today, we discovered that there might be a Nethermind bug. I think the Nethermind team is currently still investigating. I'm not sure if they have anything to share yet regarding how serious the bug is or what they can say, but it seems to be related to Fusaka.
Hi guys, yeah, it seems to be related to Fusaka and to reorg, so we are still investigating.
Yep, and other than that, I think every other EL team has made a mainnet release with the mainnet times, and on the CL side, everyone but Prism has made a mainnet release, and they are currently soaking the release and should be ready by Monday based on our latest information. But we should
Sounds
have a
good.
blog post going out maybe today, and we're going to put to be determined for Nethermind and Prism for now, for the versions.
Sounds good.
So yeah, okay. Sorry.
Or maybe
Yeah.
Manu, go ahead.
Yeah, I can speak quickly about Prism. So yes, we discovered a bug in Prism, which was in the code base for a long time, but only showed up at Fusaka on Hoodie. We understood this bug, we fixed it. We ran the fix for a little bit less than 24 hours now. Without any issue. And so yes, the plan is to release on next Monday.
Sounds good. Matthew?
Yeah, I wanted to just bring up something that because we also found a bug that didn't rear its head until we got to Hootie, and it was directly related to the size of the network and the timing between columns. Just because you got to a real like Hootie's the first real network with real mainnet conditions. So it's something that a few of us had talked about is that maybe proposing the fork transition process has some built-in time to allow, like we had an issue, Prism had an issue, Nethermind had an issue that really only showed up on Hootie. So some period of time between when we go live with the latest fork on Hootie and when the releases get cut, so that we have time to react to bugs that pop up when we get there.
I think last week we brought up this discussion, or maybe it was this Monday, whether we would like to push for the client releases still for this week. And basically, the conclusion was that most client teams were fine to make a release this week, other than Prism. And well, Lodestar also had the chance to basically ask for a few extra days, but the idea was that we want to have 1 month between the releases and mainnet. So yeah, the only thing we could do is possibly schedule the fork to a later date if we need additional time between forks and scheduling.
And I understand that for this fork, I know that there is a big push, and I know that the mainnet date was kind of a really a big goal, which I do support still. We're released and we're ready, but I'm just talking about as a process thing. Instead of having Hootie release or Hootie fork transition and then release date 2 or 3 days after that, and then scheduling 30 days for mainnet, do Hootie fork, and then give a week or two to allow the Hootie fork to soak, to allow the BPOs. Like in this case, the BPOs didn't actually happen until technically the fork or the release was needed to be ready for mainnet. So basically, just saying that like from Hootie, you have like a 1 or 2 week soak to see how the clients do on the Hootie network, and then cut releases, and then 30 days to mainnet for the next fork, or just as part of our forking process. Just a thought.
Yeah, and I think this is in general a reasonable conversation also for future hard forks. I am wondering specifically for consequences for Fusaka, are we still feeling okay then with going ahead with the timeline as is though, accepting that there will be two releases that basically will come after the initial announcement, or is this a reason to delay the Fusaka timeline specifically?
I mean, for us specifically, no, we're our release for mainnet is cut. We were able to get through that, but I know that there are other teams, obviously, uh, that have concerns, but I don't want to speak for them.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to give room for concerns. I would just kind of my default would just be to say we go basically go ahead with the plan as is. So basically now would be the time if anyone would specifically not want us to go ahead with the Fusaka rollout plan as is. Please speak up now. Okay, then sounds like for Fusaka specifically, we'll go ahead as Barnabas just described. And then, yes, we should definitely pick up the kind of the general process conversation also afterwards then for future hard forks. So I agree. Awesome. And then one last thing I saw on the agenda that was not actually me putting it on there, so that was already on the agenda. There was a reminder, please add the relevant coordinators from your client team to this doc. There's a doc linked for the Fusaka upgrade, so I assume that's relevant. So yeah, just reminder. Okay, anything else at all regarding Fusaka? Anything we should touch on this call? Okay, so there will be a announcement for the mainnet releases coming, and then we'll backfill the missing clients there. And go ahead. Awesome. Looking forward to Fusaka. With that, we have the rest of the call to focus on mostly Amsterdam. For Amsterdam, just to briefly get a small agenda point out of the way. Oh, wait, actually, wow. Okay, this makes no sense. I'm not sure why I put the H-star naming under Amsterdam. Anyway, it's on the agenda, so might as well briefly get to it. There is a call for H-star naming. That's obviously not Amsterdam related, but just maybe someone wants to say 30 seconds where people should go. Or you can just find it on the agenda. So if you have opinions about the way the EL and CL names for H-star should be combined, then go to the agenda and you'll find a link. Awesome. And then on to the main part of the call today, which is the first pass at Glamsterdam fork scoping. I just put just a few notes together into just visual, like a presentation. If maybe Nix or Josh, if you could share the screen for that. Awesome. And if we go to the first slide there, basically the idea discussed with Alex and a few people, this would be my proposal for the process for today, and of course feel free to object here, but basically the point is we have like 40 EIPs roughly. If we specifically start having individual CFI DFI discussions today, I think that will really blow up the the call. So what I would propose is that we just decide no specific decisions today. Instead, it's more about temperature checks. But I think it would be really important that we have a specific output coming out of the call. Otherwise, we just don't make progress. So my goal would be to navigate us through the list of ERPs. We have a really nice, convenient grouping by themes that I have on the other slides that gives us some sort of like handle to go through the ERPs, and that we come out of it. I will basically then just in a maybe somewhat opinionated way synthesize all the comments from the call today and create a CFI candidate list and a DFI candidate list. This is not an official governance artifact in any form, so this has no direct meaning for the governance process other than to guide for the call in 2 weeks. To guide the discussion. So we can basically then start with the DFI ERPs. Anyone who's on the DFI list can also basically knows that the champions can try over the next 2 weeks asynchronously to convince people why their ERP maybe is important. And that basically people just know the CFI candidates are the ones to also prioritize for potential testing scope, these kind of things. That would be my proposal, and then process-wise, we would start with I'd briefly just go through all the clients and ask for just like a 1 minute summary of have you published your opinions on general kind of fork scoping yet? And if so, is it like an ERP by ERP, or is it just basically give us like a 1 minute summary of basically what the client has published, if anything, in terms of preferences yet? And then I'll also give a 1 minute update from the repricing side, and then we just go through the ERPs. Just wanted to briefly see, does this general process make sense for people? If so, I would just go ahead. And again, it's not ideal, but I think just given that we have an unprecedented number of ERPs, this is the best that I, and also like with Alex, in conversation with Alex, that we could see. Awesome. Then actually, I don't really have slides for the first part, the clients. So maybe we can stop the screen share for now, and then I'll just briefly call on each client. Again, the idea is not that you actually like walk through the entire kind of document that you have, the entire reasoning. Just give us like a 1 minute high level. What have you published basically? I'll go through the list of the ones that I saw on the agenda. So the first one was Nethermind. So someone from Nethermind who could very briefly give
Yes,
an
yes,
update.
we published a list. We tried to like tier the EAPs. It's not like if your EAP or EAP is in lower tier, we are not open to discussion if there is a good reason. And one of the EAPs like that is the state, for example, state gas cost increases. We are open to discussion. We just didn't really like that much the EAP proposed. So yeah, so that's our thing. It is published, and like please also read into some details because like I said, we can also are happy to discuss the lower EAPs if there is a good reason for that.
Sounds good. Then we also have something published from the Geth side. Is that someone on the call that could briefly describe that?
Yeah, so we did publish a document. The point of the document is twofold. One is just ranking all the EAPs, and we have explain the tier system, how we interpreted it. We do think that there's like room to ship a significant number of ERPs, especially because of the repricing. Basically, how this is going to work is the way we see it is the repricing effort is not really done, and there's a lot of EAPs in there, and they will all have to be evaluated somehow. And then whatever comes out of this process, we can basically make it a priority to ship this. But we don't want to comment on like all of these individual repricing EIPs because it's not really super clear yet which ones will really make it or what kind of tweaking will be required. We do also think that like most of the other like changes that can be kind of simple. Like there aren't really that many complex changes. And from our side, I guess in our document, the main things that are actually very complicated is some of the stuff we put in S tier because we highlighted it mostly just for for the purpose of showing that we think it's important. So, for example, the trustless log index that one of our guys is also proposing, Jolt 7745, that one is pretty complex to implement, but we do think it will be worth it also to like go for it. But most of the other EIPs are actually very simple changes, just like a bit of extra logic in the gas or just changing some numbers and so on. So we think we can actually ship quite a few EIPs in this fork, and this is the sentiment that I want to mostly convey.
Awesome. Thank you. Next up, we had a document by Aragon.
Yes, so we've published our stand on most AIPs. We have some question marks, and it means we either didn't have a chance to look into it, or maybe like people don't have an opinion or don't care. But yeah, for most, we have either yes or no. I think I would actually like I meta comment. I would err on the side of rejecting EIPs. Not because I don't like AIPs, but because I think we should prioritize headliners and avoid the same mistake that we made in Pectra when we actually tried to squeeze too much into it, and then we had to split the hard fork. So like on at least on our side, the EL headline block access list will require a lot of work, a lot of work. So I would rather do a small number of low-hanging fruits and not jeopardize block access lists rather than be too greedy and try to squeeze too much. As to repricing, I think that I quite like the approach that we took in Fusaka during the perf testnet. I would actually keep doing the same, namely just start repricing bumping the price of the most underpriced things. I think that will be more helpful with scaling than like this general repricing that effectively means lowering the cost of computational opcodes, and to me it's a low like priority because, well, yeah, I mean computational opcodes are a small part of the total gas schedule, while the effort to do it like comprehensively is quite big. Yeah, so I would, in terms of repricing, I would concentrate on low-hanging fruits.
Sounds good. Then next up, we had comments from Red.
Yeah. I also posted our stance earlier today. So there's lots of EIPs in time. The way we approached it is we just gave our high priority EIPs and then also kind of like tier 2 EIPs, happy to riff on the format and do another iteration. So the way we looked at each EIP, like in the list, like we looked at two angles. What is the performance impact? And here we were mostly looking into like the repricing EIPs that we would like to prioritize. And I think like we think this will facilitate lots of performance optimizations. And then secondly, how will this EIP improve developer experience? And yeah, those are the two kind of decision parameters that we're going for. Happy to discuss any of those and add more details on the impact and the why in the post.
Sounds good. And then we had a well, before we get to numbers, maybe briefly, so I don't think there was a document published from the Besu side, right? I just wanted to ask basically, where are you at in terms of your internal evaluation? Do you have some general kind of high-level views already on what you would prefer to prioritize in the POC?
We do, Ansgar. So we have not gotten to the point where we're ready to publish. However, we have consensus circling around fossil in our S tier and 5, 6, maybe 7 of the gas repricing EIPs. So we have specific opinions on the ones that we think are ready to go and aren't. We are not ready to publish at the moment. We will be next week. Just need a little bit more time, but the general shape of things for our S tier is fossil, and then gas repricings, and then an assortment of other things. I think we kind of concur with what Gath is saying, that most of these things do seem fairly low effort and should be famous last words, but they should all fit in a hard fork.
Sounds good. And then we had comments by Nimbus, so specifically like scoped around the Pureth kind of effort, obviously kind of more cross layer. So do we have someone to comment on this?
Yeah, sure. So in general, obviously, those are the SSE based ones. So 7688, obviously, and I don't want to get but broadly speaking, it's, let's say, what we're oriented towards a subset that we think is a safe subset of the Pureth. And I want to explicitly kind of orient this that there's parts of Pureth that we think are not yet ready, actually, and see the document, the Pureth.guide document linked in there for details, but that should specifically not be in Amsterdam. But we think there are up to about a half dozen EIPs which would fit in Amsterdam. Yeah. Now, the Nimbus also has views on. So there's a Max Blobs is something that we support, although I think with a caveat that is granted not really a consensus EIP. It doesn't actually matter that much. Clients can implement it either way or not. And I specifically regarding the repricings, I do want to sort of say I'm coming the call data. The call data one I think is from our perspective the highest priority one, because that is the hard blocker. Anything which affects block size becomes an absolutely hard blocker on scaling without significantly more networking changes. And everything else is, some clients bounce around in performance, and that's fine. But that, I think that if none of the other repricings go in, we want that one to go in, and then otherwise see the documents. Okay, yeah, that's true. Access size reprice. Sorry. Like, I want to agree with Lucas there. I didn't include it, but I agree. Yeah.
Okay, so basically you're just saying you have a special focus around the size related repricings. Okay. Awesome.
Yes. As opposed to the ones which are sort of benchmarking, which we're all obviously in favor of, get that as accurate as possible, but those are a little bit lower priority.
Sounds good. Thank you. And of course, just to clarify, right, for people, these are more CL side requests about EL priorities. So obviously somewhat of a different relationship here than from the other client's point of view, but yeah.
Well, yes and no. We have an EL. I mean, granted, it's not used by, but it is released. It's alpha, sure. But so we do have an EL centric to some extent perspective on this, but I will agree that it is not primarily it is not the Nimbus people are using right now. But we have people.
Yeah.
We're working.
It makes sense. I really just only meant it as like just for people following, kind of as a general kind of categorization governance wise. But yeah, no.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Makes sense. Awesome. Thank you, Dustin. Then again, moving on for now. Actually, I had two small things before we get to the repressing summary. Just to mention, specifically as part of the process decisions. Alex and I also discussed that it would make the most sense for Fossil, given that it's a cross-layer change that is more CL heavy to begin with, and the CL has much more decision bandwidth this time around for the hard fork, that we will just make a decision to have the exclusive discussions and decisions around Fossil on the CL side, meaning ACDC. So for anyone from the EL side that obviously wants to participate in that, wants to have opinions, please come join the ACDC calls. We will not have time to discuss or make decisions about Fossil here on the ACDE calls. So that just, and of course, with the asterisk that whether or not we actually include Fossil will inform and change maybe how much room we have on the EL side as well, but the discussions and decisions will happen on ACDC. And then the other point I wanted to briefly mention, just because people have mentioned it, block level access lists. I also want to take to just give into consideration that on block access list, there is specifically several optimizations beyond the base spec compliance that all require significant work in clients to support. And we might end up deciding to ship them as basically as expected feature set. So basically that is transaction parallelization, that is parallel state computation, that is using for clients that for the whom that makes sense, using the state diff for syncing, and that is also parallel loading of state. Any of these, we might end up deciding this is an optional performance improvement, or this is basically this is something that we expect all clients to support by the time of the fork. Where we land on each of these points in terms of decisions also influences the scope, the fork scope, right? Because if there's more expected as support as minimum support, as guaranteed support for bulk club access lists, that of course limits somewhat the remaining throughput that clients have to develop other features. We will not discuss this today, but maybe in 2 weeks we can also make decisions around what is the expected feature set around block club access lists to support. So just wanted to highlight that because it's relevant here. With that out of the way, I think we can jump back into the presentation, because I had one slide with quick update from the repricing breakouts, and then wanted to go to the main ERP discussions. Exactly. So, and again, of course, please keep in mind that as I go through this, that I'm obviously biased here myself as one of the people involved with the repricings. So take that with a grain of salt, but I'm trying to be as neutral as possible. So we had 2 breakouts these last 2 weeks, and just very quick high level. There's basically 2 types of EAPs. You'll also see this in a second when we walk through the EAPs. One of them is core. Core does not need to be a priority statement. It just means core repricing is anything that really just changes the price, nothing else. It does not change kind of the logic. And the idea there is really just to take all the operations and kind of basically try to make them all cost the same gas per second of effort, either on the transmission side or then on the execution, loading, whatever side, basically the same worst case time per operation. Basically that is the core intent around core repricings, and there's I think 6 or 7 EAPs specifically in that bucket. And then there are several more. It's a larger number, like around 10 individual EAPs that want to make changes to specific parts of the pricing logic to make this more efficient. So you can think of it as this kind of core that at least is proposed to be treated as a bundle, and then all the other ones are individual yes/no decisions, basically. The recommendation from the repricing champions was to basically to CFI this kind of the score bundle. Again, we will not make CFI decisions today anyway, but this would be the recommendation. But I wanted to highlight that is not necessarily yet universally supported across participants of the breakouts. In particular, there's still some worry around the significant remaining work on the benchmarking. We also heard this from the Aragon statement, for example, today. And there is indeed the option to say, like, we might, for example, could on all codefs decide to generally CFI the overall kind of like core repricing effort, but with the asterisk that we will rework the exact scope, and it could be limited to, for example, only treat a subset of the operations that have especially bad performance or things like that. So basically the exact shape of this core bundle is still somewhat in flux. And then the only other thing I wanted to briefly highlight is that there was one EAP in particular out of these optional additions that seemed to have universal support. So this is like at least on my kind of top of my potential CFI candidate list, which is the 7778 refund logic change. That one seemed to have universal approval across the board. Yeah, that's all from the summary. And then I would just jump to the next slide and just start the main EAP discussion section. Again, if we get through all of this, if we get through all 40 EAPs and we still have some time, we can actually just see if we might make final decisions on anything already today. But for this first walkthrough, we would just not actually make any CFI or DFI decisions. So I'll just, for each of these bundles, I'll just basically like briefly highlight what the bundle, what this kind of this cluster of EAPs is about, and then just ask if any clients have general opinions on whether they would want to CFI or DFI any of them. The first one is a bit special because again, it could be treated as a bundle. So this is these core repricing EIPs. So these are all of the EIPs that touch direct repricings related to bandwidth, state, data, or memory, or state growth. Do we have general client opinions on, is this a CFI candidate as a bundle for people? Is it a DFI candidate, or would you reject the bundle approach and just CFI or DFI individual EIPs?
Well, so I would actually reject the bundle approach and the CFI or DFI individual IPs. I think like because general repricing, like the meat of it is lowering the cost of computational opcodes. Maybe you can transform it into something else, but that's what its de facto stands for. And I think I would be happy with them cover EIP to bump the price of the most underpriced things, like we did with Modexp.
Sounds good. And I'll also try to keep everyone's comments to like try to be as concise as possible, basically. Justin?
We really appreciate the bundling and the effort that went into bundling them, and we found it very helpful in our reasoning. However, we do not think that they should be included as bundles or should be considered as bundles for inclusion, and rather they should be examined on a one-on-one basis.
Sounds good. Carl?
Yeah, I want to flag a few things. One, it's already been said a few times that people are more for making some things more expensive as opposed to others cheaper. Repricing is a relative thing. So if we make one thing more expensive or another thing cheaper, that's effectively the same. The second thing is what's called general repricing here is basically just the compute side of certain opcodes. I think the name is a little bad. And then the third thing is that if we really want to start pushing the scale of Ethereum and the EVM, we're going to very quickly start running into state bottlenecks. That's for both like histories, like state growth size, and for just like the amount of time it takes to do reads and writes, which I think are also mispriced. So I don't think it's as simple as, oh, we can just bump a few things up. I think like we should, if we really want to start pushing to hundreds of millions and eventually gigagas, then we're going to need to do things about state as well. And this would be a good time to do that.
Sounds good. Maria?
Yes, so I would just add a point for arguing in favor of the bundle. So in my mind, the core reason for bundling is that if we reprice certain things, so for instance, if we were to solve a few bottlenecks on the compute size, on the compute side with the 7904, we would not be solving all the bottlenecks we had. So we would be solving some of the bottlenecks, but this means that then state and data, for instance, would become bottlenecks, and we would not be able to raise the gas limit. So in my mind, this is really the minimum bundle that touches enough resources so that we can remove all the bottlenecks and continue to scale. And again, another point for doing this as a bundle is that these prices must make sense together. So if we reprice things without changing some other things, we might be missing relevant bottlenecks there. So I think this bundle is the idea that we need to benchmark all these things, all these key resources, and we need to make them work together for a certain target gas limit that we want to reach in Amsterdam. And then there's some discussions on scope. Maybe there's some operations that are not as mispriced as that, and so we can just leave them be, but we need to consider them holistically. And I think that's why like we need resources to do this. And so I think it's important to treat them together.
Okay, thank you. Dragan?
To be honest, I would like to have them as separate IPs, but looking at them as the group, I see there are two groups here. One is increasing any storage or creation of the contract. This needed if we want to slow down the expansion of the state. And second group is maybe nivellation of gas and like removing at potential edge cases where the gas is not priced correctly. I would say that first group where we need to increase the gas for creation or access to the state is more important. But either way, yeah, that's my comment on this.
Sounds good. And Justin, and then probably last comment for this section.
I just want to ask the group, how confident are we that these interactions are even discoverable at design time as opposed to test time? I think that's, we're going to do our best to really make sure that we have that nailed down at design time, but it's inevitable that we're going to find interactions much later in the testing process. So I appreciate the points that Maria and Carl are making with regard to the bundling and how they work. I'm just a little apprehensive that that's doable.
Sounds good. Ben, do you think you can take this to chat, or do you want to very briefly save?
Yeah, just my concern on the increase of the state creation. So it's operating on a different dimension. So if that caused the gas price to fall because now things are expensive, then people can create the same amount of state, just everything is now at a cheaper gas price. So my concern is it doesn't necessarily. The other ones are like how much can you fit in a block, but since they're operating on the increases to state are operating on a completely different dimension. It may not have the intended effect. So, for instance, if the gas price fell because of them, then people could afford to put more in a block. If you see what I mean, it's not
Yeah,
hard.
makes sense. Then just to briefly synthesize, right? Like I think there have been kind of some concerns around the general bundling approach, but also some pushbacks. So that is a topic we'll have to resolve. And then I think state growth is just a kind of like a bit separate from everything else. So we would probably like should have a separate conversation offline and then also in 2 weeks about like the specifics of the state growth approach here. And I think there are also alternative approaches that have been proposed since. Okay, then for now, moving on from this section. And again, this section was a bit special because it was more about this bundling nature. Everything else from now on should be more homogeneous in terms of conversation because it's all more individual yes/no questions. So if we go to the next slide, we will have 2 more slides about repricing APIs. There were a lot of repricing APIs, but these are more individual features. From this list, again, recommended here was just specifically purely based on Maria's, and I had some input in this as well, subjective view. So this is not, there's nothing objective about these recommendations other than that we think these are the more interesting ones of the repricings. From this list, are there ones that the clients really like, that you really like, or that you really would prefer to see in DFI for this hard fork? Andrew?
Yeah, I would DFI the milligas approach. I think we have much bigger fish to fry, and the improvement, the potential improvement in precision is not worth the complexity.
Sounds good. Lucas?
I'm especially for the first 2 here. The like to for the refunds to not affect gas limit computations. This seems like a protocol bug to some extent, like a omission, and the limit on the transit storage needs to be set because I think the worst case scenario on transit storage allocate quite a lot right now.
Makes sense. And by the way, this reminds me, just I wanted to mention, you offered reach out to me that there are some concerns about the compatibility with account abstraction approaches, specifically around 7971. So that's something we should figure out offline. Felix?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, like, regarding the DFI, we were also discussing this EIP 8058. So yeah, so in general, we were in Geth, we think that this like 8053, 8059 it's not really the good time right now to do this. And I mean, these concerns are valid that the gas is not precise enough, but we still feel like it's not important now. So basically same as Aragon. And then for the last one, it also seems kind of optional. So yeah, there is some, it's also one of these things. It just makes it more correct somehow, but we don't think it's the biggest blocker. So we would opt to like DFI the bottom three at least right now, just so we have less things to consider.
Sounds good. Any other opinions, Marius?
Yes, for the hard limits for transient storage, as I understand it, this will interfere with AA. I would like to hear more from the author and maybe the AA teams how they think about this. Not on this call, but maybe on the next call. Yeah. So if the I think it's Charles. If I don't know if you see it, but yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think there needs to be more work in going into this before I can yeah, before I feel it's right for me now.
Sounds good. Maria?
Yes, I would argue in favor of 8032, so size-based storage gas pricing. So I think from the core bundle, the state's growth EIP, some people raised the concerns of the values being a bit too high, and I think adding this EIP would actually help there, because what we are doing here is we are making accessing and writing to large contracts more expensive, so that the base costs for the rest of the contracts don't need to be as expensive. So I think this helps both with state growth, but also with the parts of state access that are hurting us the most at the moment. And so I would argue in favor and for not BFIing this one for now.
Sounds good. Any other comments regarding any of these?
I
Otherwise,
wonder
Ben, yeah.
for 8032, I like it. I'm wondering if we'd want to bring the limit down a bit more.
Yeah, I think adjustments, but like I would say we should probably discuss adjustments offline, right?
Yeah, but it's a good one.
Sounds good. Awesome. Then I think we can move on to the next slide. So we have one more batch of repricing related ERPs. This was also all the ones that were initially repricing related. In the later blocks, I think there's one or two that also could plausibly be in the repricing camp. They just were not on this list yet, so I put them into the later blocks. So these ones, the first bullet point obviously ignore. This is just a formatting issue. So it's 5 more EIPs, chunk-based code localization, linear page-based memory costing. This one specifically also has some account abstraction issues, warm account write metering, multidimensional gas metering, and interblock temporal locality gas discounts. Do we have clients with opinions on any of these, either in the positive or negative direction?
Interblock temporary local gas discounts. I'm very against that, and I think we came to that consensus in the team. It makes very hard, for example, if you don't have balls, and in archive node you don't have balls to trace some old blocks, etc. Do some things like that. Like it might be very, very complex to get there.
Carl?
Yeah, just to flag that there's an alternative EIP for 7923, which does linear memory costing just without the paging, which is a little simpler but has different sets of trade-offs. So should be considered as an alternative and trade-off if people are interested or not in the memory costing stuff. link in the chat.
Yeah, and I think that one is on one of the later slides. I agree it should be conceptually here, just didn't make the cut in time when we created these. Ben?
Assuming we do quite a large number of the other repricing EIPs, then 8011 multidimensional, it might be too much in Amsterdam, and might be better to see how everything plays out and then reassess what we want to do there.
Sounds good. And of course, also just for context, right? Like these were also the EIPs that from the repricing champion sides, it was more like uncertainty about whether they should make the cut for Amsterdam. Awesome. Any further comments on this list? Otherwise, Marius?
Yeah, so regarding 8057, we are also strongly against this. This idea has come up multiple times in the past already, and Martin has had written a pretty good explainer for why this is not good and the drawbacks it has and why we shouldn't do it back in the day. So yeah.
Sounds good. And Charles, as non-core dev, I would ask you to at least to basically try to keep the comment concise.
Yes, I'm one of the authors of 7923, and I just wanted to comment that we did some more benchmarking today, and I think we'll make some simplifications to the
Sounds good.
spec.
Yeah, I think simplifications was one of the things people were asking for there. Okay. Then I think we can move on to the next section. So these are individual EVM improvements. We have the pay opcode, we have revert creation in case of non-empty storage, linear EVM memory limits, slot num opcode, gas to ETH opcode, set delegate instruction, call and return opcodes for the EVM, static relative jumps and calls for the EVM, and backwards compatible swap n, dupe n, and exchange. Do we have CFI or DFI opinions from any clients regarding any of these? Ben?
Strongly in favor of 8024.
Sounds good. Andrew?
So I think 7610 is already implemented by everyone. So it's in the tests, it's in the clients, it's enabled retroactively. So I don't see how it should be part of the Glamsterdam discussion. And also about the 7979, I think it's we shouldn't go there. We should do EOF or like reconsider EOF. Because it's a superior alternative. Like if we want to do something like that, we should do EOF.
Sounds good. Felix?
Yeah, so I just want to give some quick comments. So we think that EIP 7843 slot num opcode is a pretty easy addition, and we feel we should just basically include it. We feel similar to about the 8024. So I think all clients agree that this change is very low complexity in implementation, but it has a high impact for the application developer. So I feel like we can even make the call about it today. Everyone seems to be in favor of it so far. Regarding some of the other ones, we did look a bit into 7791 gas to ETH. It's hard to say, but we feel like this should not happen. So we are against this one. It's not exactly so easy to explain, but the mechanism itself, like there is some merit to it, but at the same time, it really it can have some unforeseen consequences. And like if we really want to do this, this requires a lot more justification. So we feel like if everyone is against it, we might as well exclude it right away. And then, yeah, I mean, I think other team members may have more opinions, so I will just also leave it to them. In general, we didn't really have too many of these EAPs in the in the high tiers. So most of these we either ranked as like being kind of strictly optional if there's some capacity to implement, or we just reject them. So yeah.
Sounds good. And again, as I said, just for the sake of getting through the entire list once, I would not, during this initial rundown, make any final decisions. But if we have time at the end of the call, I'm happy to just give room for open space for individual final decisions people want to propose making, and then the discussion attached to that. Any other comments, opinions, plus or minus towards any of these EIPs on the list? Dragan?
7610. This is the case where that's kind of not possible to happen in a minute, but it gives us a lot of headache in testing. We had some chats in Discord about this, but I'm not sure if anything is concluded. We would like to remove that AIP.
Yes, so I think we at some point had already shipped the DIP 7610, or like all the clients have agreed to that at some point, and we retroactively did it. The only reason why it is on this list again is because we have been talking about it. And yeah, the question was whether we want to make the decision to reinforce that this is the rule, or we want to make a decision to change that rule. And yeah, this doesn't need to. Yeah, we should just not take up time to discuss this EIP at this time.
I agree.
Sounds good. Dragan, you want to respond?
I agree. That's it. Yeah, other than that, 802524 sounds great.
Sounds good. Felix, do you still have your hand up? Do you want to say something more? Is that just an artifact from your last comment?
Sorry, I just didn't lower it.
Sounds good. Mario?
Hey, yes. I think we have analyzed many of these EIPs, and I think the one that stands out as like something many client teams want to do is 8024. And we also analyze this from a testing perspective, and I mean, it's not free, but it's like relatively straightforward to test. So I think we would support that from the testing team. Yeah.
Sounds good. Any further comments on this block? I think this is the largest set of individual EIPs from these slides. Okay, then we can go to the next slide. These are just a few ones. We already heard a little bit about the pure ETH topic. So we have SSE transactions, SSE receipts, and I think the last one is actually just a CL side feature, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, do any of the clients have opinions on either these specific EIPs or maybe the kind of the question of the pure ETH effort regarding Amsterdam in general? Justin?
Yes, we're generally against SSZ, both 6404 and 6466. Yeah.
Sounds good. Andrew?
So I think it should be part of like Purith should be a separate headliner. So it should not definitely be in Glamsterdam. It should be discussed as its own headliner.
Sounds good. Any further comments on this?
Yeah, so one point I'd like to make regarding the separate separate headliner. Obviously, it was submitted as a headliner. Beyond that, though, the headliner, there are many parts of this which are clearly not ready for Amsterdam, and so Purith as one big unified headliner probably is not ready. However, there are parts which do look potentially quite useful. And one way of looking at this is a subset scope of Purith. So which is to say more than one EIP, sure, because they all kind of complement each other, but that are not necessarily waiting for example, I mean, we've talked about the log indexing here. Well, I mean, there's a lot of skepticism of that one for various reasons, out of scope of my comment here, but that a full pure ETH implementation would have to address this. But rather than wait for the necessarily log indexing to be resolved, do things that do achieve something useful.
Sounds good. Lukas?
So as much as I would like to have those, I don't think we have scope to prioritize this, so I would just decline it at the moment. It's not. We have more important things, in my opinion, in the pipeline.
Sounds good. And then as a general process comment, right? So this is kind of the intention for today. So I will, unless there's more comments here on this point, I would probably come out of this having kind of these SSE EIPs on the DFI candidate list, which means that then also like for the next 2 weeks, for a champion like Dustin, that would basically be specifically a hint that like, okay, if I want to convince people to revisit that decision, the next 2 weeks would be really crucial because like in 2 weeks we might then make a final DFI decision here. So that's kind of the idea of this process, right? So this would for now basically be a clear indication that this is where this is headed. Lukas, you still have your hand up, or but I assume that
Sorry, just hand up.
yeah, no worries. Awesome. Any further comments on this section? Otherwise, we can move on. Okay, then we can go to the next slide. Yes. So contract deployment related, we have the removing the init code size limit. We have the contract code size related, and we have the deterministic factory pre-deploy. I think that the first two are conceptually a bit closer regarding the kind of the limits around the deployment itself. The third one is more utility EIP. Note that there is also a related EIP in the general repricing section that would otherwise allow for larger contracts. So there is some interdependency here. Do we have clients with opinions on either of those three? Andrew?
Yeah, I think we should do 7907. It'll help smart contract devs.
Sounds good. Any other comments? Felix?
So yeah, in our ranking, we did rank 7907 very low. And the reason for that is that we think it would be much better to go with the chunk-based code marketization scheme. Which is basically like we're no longer really like pursuing this EAP anyways.
Sounds good. There was also comments. I think if I'm not mistaken, I'm gonna briefly double check that the chunk-based one was mentioned in the possible additions section. So the last page of the repricing EIPs, we did not have comments there. So if someone basically has an opinion on that came up to them right now. Also we could still hear that. That's 2926 chunk-based code modelization. That is conceptually related here. Andrew?
Well, I think it should be done when we actually decide to do vehicle or the binary tree or something like that, because I wouldn't do it ahead of it.
Makes sense. Ben?
Isn't the chunk base quite expensive? So when you deploy a contract, you'd have to chop it into tiny chunks and then merkleize it. So it's suddenly much more expensive to deploy a contract than it.
Guillaume, maybe if you want to directly respond to that.
Yeah, I'm not sure why you say it's more expensive, much more. I mean, yes, of course it's going to be more expensive because you need to do some chunking, but it's just about adding bytes every 31 bytes, so I'm not sure why you say it's much more expensive.
So I assume you need to make a tree and yeah, anyway. It, we can take it offline.
Yeah, okay, let's do that.
Yeah, I think I have heard some efficiency questions around this EAP specifically, so I think offline is a good place. Dragan?
Just want to add it is complex because it touches a lot of things. Merkle base, Merkleizing the contract.
Makes sense. Then maybe one question that I would have here would be, so obviously here on this list, like as we said, 7997 is a bit separate. It's more a convenience feature. I think 7903 we can also basically like mix and match with anything else. But in terms of a strategy for increasing the maximum contract size allowed, we would basically have the three approaches of doing nothing in Amsterdam, doing the one that's listed here, 7907, or which is I think what we also discussed for Fusaka and then ended up not doing, or doing this chunking based approach in general. To not, instead of just like opinions on the individual EAPs, do clients have like a preferred out of those three options, basically like a specific preferred strategy of what we should do with contract size in Amsterdam? Lucas?
So Nevermind is quite for 7907. We just voiced the same things we were voicing when it was proposed for Spectra, or sorry, for Fusaka, that the size increase might be too steep for us. We would prefer something less steep, like 64 kilobytes or around that number.
Sounds good. Anyone else with opinions here? Guillaume? And
Yeah, I mean,
ask to keep it concise.
yeah, it's just like 7907 is completely redundant with 2926. Okay, there's been some claims of 2926 being more complex. I obviously disagree, having considered those things for a long time. Of course, we will take that offline. But yeah, like this is guaranteed to be. What I mean is 7907 is guaranteed to be completely redundant as soon as 2926 or any tree change happens, and therefore, what's the point of doing it, basically?
Right. And at least it is important to highlight that indeed it would not make sense to ship both of them. So they're in a sense alternative approaches here. Andrew?
Well, I think like 2926 should be actually done when we decide on the binary, like on doing the binary tree or whatever, because yeah, what 7907 buys us in the meantime, it just makes the lives of smart contract devs easier. So we can, if we decide to go with 2926 in the future, we just replace 7907 with it. So it's not a big deal. In terms of, yeah, there will be some coding, but I think it's quite all right. My worry with 2926 is that if we do it ahead of the binary tree, then we may end up with a different design, and then it's somehow like the current iteration of 2926 is somehow suboptimal with the updated design, or we don't do the binary tree at all, and then it becomes a bit strange. Yeah, I think it's just premature to do it.
Yeah, what one last comment from Guillaume here?
Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean by strange, but indeed, like the binary tree EIP needs to happen. If it never does, and it makes no sense to do it without having ZKVM, so we're definitely not having it anytime soon. That means you still have very large witnesses, which 2926 solves. You still have prover killers, which 2926 solves, and it allows you to remove the code size limit completely instead of having this half bake. Oh, you're gonna pay for it, but only half the time. And yeah, it's just a bit tacky. 2926 is a much cleaner solution, and yeah, like yes, if it's redundant, if if binary trees happen, but they are yet to be approved. So if you're willing to open the discussion of having the binary tree transition in Glamsterdam, I think it's a good argument, but I don't think anyone is ready to advocate for this. So yeah, as far as I'm concerned, it's an empty promises that will have binary trees in the future, and as a result, we should not plan that they are happening.
Makes sense. Yes, I do think this is a general topic, the strategy around what we do about contract size in Amsterdam. We should take that offline. That seems like there's still some unresolved questions there. Okay, then next slide. So cryptography related EIPs, we have four. There's the Falcon precompile, there's secondary signature algorithms, P256, and the precompile for MLDSA. Do we have client opinions on any of these? Felix.
Yeah, so we wanted to mention that we do think that so I have two comments about it. The EIPs 7932 and 8030. So these are revolve around signing transactions and with a different curve, or in the case of 7932, more generally just with like any kind of signature somehow. We think it's not necessarily the time right now to make these changes. They are like not in themselves bad, but it's just seems kind of a distraction now, and also there isn't really like a we don't really want to work on this right now. And then for my other comment is that for EIP 7619 and 8051, so these add precompiles for cryptographic operations. We have a very well-established process for adding these kinds of precompiles. It is easy to do it in some ways, but also it's a lot of work. So that's the thing. I mean, we know how to do it, but the work is big, especially because we really have to make sure that they are all implemented the same way. And with the newer algorithms, they can be quite complex, or there might not necessarily be an implementation in all of the programming environments that are like needed. So this can add up to a significant chunk of work. So we feel like we wouldn't necessarily want to do them, but there's nothing per se bad about it.
Sounds good. Any further comments? Mark? Oh.
Yeah, for Nethermind team, so those two middle ones, I think generally we agreed that we weren't sure if it was the right direction or if we were going to do like sort of the account abstraction path to post quantum, whether those two would make sense. As to the other two, I guess we didn't have too strong feelings on them. Like obviously it's important to think forward towards post quantum, but we're not really sure yet if those are the right algorithm signatures we need to support, or whether this is the time to add it.
Sounds good. Carl?
Yeah, my comment was largely the same, but specifically on Falcon 512, that we're not sure that this will necessarily be the industry standard for how to handle post-quantum signatures, so this seems very premature to ship this.
Dano?
So yeah, Falcon 512 probably going to be FNDSA. MLDSA is final, it's FIPS 204. And when it comes to implementing these on the EVM, MLDSA is one that's even more expensive. It'll take up the whole block. So pre-compiled to support these industry standard features will be very valuable. But the reason for these two is because of post-quantum, we're looking at either hardware or regulation timeframe that we need to start looking at getting off of EC curves. And we need to start looking at that sooner rather than later, because not only implementation time, we need to concern ourselves with how long it's going to take our end users to migrate off of that. So the more we wait, the harder we make that on ourselves. So just keep that in mind.
Makes sense. Any further comments? Okay, then we can go to the next slide. We are getting close to to the end. This is well, no, that's a bit premature, but we are comfortably more than halfway through. Let's put it that way. We have transaction and block features. That's Bloom filters, the ETH transfers emitting a lock, trustless lock index, conditional transactions, the max blob flag for local builders. I'm not sure, actually, this might not be an consensus changing EIP. We have the provable RPC responses, the Genesis file format, and the sparse blob pool. Do we have client comments on any of them? Justin?
Just a couple brief comments. I did want to point out that Genesis file format does not require a hard fork. I believe the same is true for 78, 72. I do think max blob flag for local builders is important. I think Genesis file format is important. And I think removing the Bloom filters is also important. ETH transfers emitting a log is something that we would like to include as well, but we feel a little bit less strongly about it.
Makes sense. And yes, as you're saying, I think some of these EIPs do not require a hard fork directly. I think they are more on the list because they would require a client release coordination point in time. So basically, hard forks are just a convenient kind of coordination point for them. Result?
Yes. Yeah, I just wanted to quickly address like ETH transfers emit log and trustless log index. So yeah, because trustless logging index is mostly like my proposal, and yeah, I do understand it's a kind of a complex thing. I'm strongly convinced that yeah, we should take over time the protocol in a direction where we can really like trustlessly prove everything. So currently I'm working on a as clean as possible implementation of this EIP, and I don't want to force anything on the protocol that like most people are not comfortable with. So in the coming weeks, I will try to present as good material as possible to try to like make this approachable. And I still think it might be like a good candidate for Glamsterdam, but yeah, this requires work. So yeah, just that. Thank you.
Sounds good. Justin, you still have your hand up. Did you have another comment? Or okay, Lukasz?
Yeah, so I think trustless log index is pretty big and potentially could be even considered part of a pure ETH headliner, but even by itself, it's definitely too big and too complex to fit into Glamsterdam.
That's good. Felix?
Yeah, so my comment, I have two comments. One of them is also regarding the trustless log index. So Jort was, I don't know if he really said it like that, but so we are currently working on just creating a change for the execution specs, just to show exactly what is the minimum complexity required for this change, like the part that is actually in the consensus. And this is the part that the EIP is about. There are more parts to it that can be implemented, but at the core of it, it just does require certain changes within the block processing to, you know, these ones is what the EIP is about. But it can be confusing because the indexing itself and the searching and so on, they are just a bit bigger than this. Anyway, then we have some other things. So we think that the things like the Genesis file format and for example, this is something that we can easily just agree on, but it makes sense to put it in the hard fork by which we will fully agree to, you know, have it implemented. In some way, we kind of reject this 78, 72 because we feel that it's kind of a pointless thing to specify the command line flags in an EIP. So maybe that's going a bit too far. So I think we're kind of walking a strange line here with these. Not about the consensus at all. They are just kind of optional recommendations, and we have to figure out a way to process these. But yeah.
Those
Yeah,
should be just feature requests on the different clients repositories.
Makes sense. Yeah, it was really tricky to structure for just today with so many EAPs, but I agree. I think kind of reworking this categorization, having a separate out of band conversation about these like non-consensus requiring non-consensus changes makes sense. Zolt?
Yeah, just one remark about the trustless log index, and yeah, I'm done with that for today. So yeah, just so that people can how you should think about the complexity is that yeah, so there's a minimum, as Felix mentioned. Yeah, I forgot to say this, but so this minimum implementation that generates the consensus hashes. So that's what I want to present some really like it's 500 lines of code, and CPU requirement, memory requirement, everything is bounded. So yeah, this is, I'm not trying to convince you about this now. I'm just saying that this is what I'm trying to sell, is that can be super useful. Maybe the full stack that generates these trustless proofs and everything. Yeah, so that's a more complex thing, but the minimum changes required for consensus, that's not so big. And like the full feature set, that's something I want to present in Get. Like, yeah, people can see why it's useful. And I think for someone who just wants to follow consensus, it's not going to be extremely complex. And yeah, this is what I want to prove. And yeah, that's it.
Awesome, thank you. Do we have any further comments? Otherwise, we can move to the next block, or maybe just a few seconds. Okay, then let's move to the next block. Salt, you also still have your hand up, by the way. Yeah, next slide. Oh, wait, was I wrong? Oh, I think I was actually, oh, never mind. This was the last, sorry, I thought we were 3 slides from the end. Okay, never mind. Then my comment was actually right, that we were basically at the end. This is great. Thank you all very much. So with that, we still have 10 minutes. Again, just to reiterate, the idea is that I will, maybe with the help of some people, go through the call, all the comments, both on the call and in the comments, and just synthesize it all into a hopefully as minimally opinionated as possible, kind of like list of DFI candidates, CFI candidates, maybe EIPs where there was either no opinion yet, or maybe just in general no consensus. And none of that, again, is binding governance-wise in any way. It's really just to structure future calls. I think a lot of this hopefully also will spawn some offline continued exploration of these EIPs. Yeah. Do we, in general, I would otherwise ask that I see if we, in the last 10 minutes, if there's any specific strong requests for already making any individual CFI or DFI decisions today. Those 10 minutes could be for that, or if there are general comments on the process. Justin?
General comments on process. So I do want to kind of express some concern about limiting the discussion of fossil to the CL call. I don't know that that's necessarily warranted. I think that's a thing that we should maybe we could take it offline, which is fine. But I do feel like this is a pretty broadly relevant EIP, both to the EL and the CL and Ethereum in general. And limiting the conversation to CL seems a little unnecessary, and the CLs already have a tremendous amount of work as it is. So I do want to raise a light objection to that notion, but I'm happy to discuss it more broadly.
Yeah, and on this point, just to clarify, and then you can still object if you want to, by the way, but I think the idea was more to say the location of the discussion will be the ACDC calls, but we would specifically, that's also why I was communicating it today here, that the idea would specifically to like directly have all the EL clients invited, and if you want to participate in that conversation, then it would not be basically it's only hosted by ACDC, but there would not be like usual for normal CL changes. Obviously, the CL clients are the ones with the voices that make the decisions, but on Fossil specifically, it would be an equal conversation across the ELs and CLs, just hosted by the ACDC calls because we have more throughput there, because there's fewer EAPs to discuss. Does that work for you, or would you still have an objection there?
No, I understand that and I appreciate that, but I also feel bad, not having the conversation in the EL space and only having it in the CL space. I think there's a lot of actors that would be interested in it from the EL side that don't generally make that call nor feel comfortable speaking up into it. Obviously, I don't have a problem speaking up anywhere. I think folks know that. But I do want to advocate for other people that do, that care deeply about fossil.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that. I think that's a trait, by the way, that the two of us share. Yeah, is this a concern that other people share? I mean, obviously, this was just a suggestion. If people strongly prefer to also have fossil in scope on the EL side, on the ACDE side, conversation-wise, we could revisit this. Is there how do other people here feel about this? Photos?
I think the difference that Fossil has with respect to other EIPs on the EL side is that we won't be affected at all if you decide to have pricing or not. On the CL side, we don't need to change our schedule. We don't need to change how we're scoping our fork, and we don't need to really be thinking about how to time it. But fossil does affect how you scope the EL fork itself. So I'm surprised that fossil is being discussed, is moved the discussion to even after you haven't been discussing all of these other EIPs. I would have included fossil before in this discussion, before all of the other ones, because if you do include fossil, then I suspect that you won't be trying to include any of these other EIPs. So I think we should focus more on the EL side of things. The CL side of things already has a big chunk to change. And if fossil is it needs to be agreed or not among the whole group. I don't think it has to be, yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to agree with Justin on that one.
Andrew?
Well, a stupid question. I thought that we were doing EPBS as the CL headliner. I don't like. It sounds strange to me that we are considering two CL headliners in a fork.
Yeah, so for clarification, because I'm not sure we ever discussed this on ACDE, but within the headliner process was decided to not be removed from the fork consideration, but instead just be bumped down to normal EIP. And actually, even given that people did think it had a specific significance for this fork, it was already bumped to CFI. So it's the one CFI EIP that we actually have for the fork right now. Does not mean we have to include it, but basically, yes. So it is no longer in consideration as a headliner, but just as a normal EIP, but with a special consideration of already being CFI'd. That's the current status. And just for comments in chat,
Well, sorry,
oh,
but
sorry.
like
Okay.
they are both big. Like again, like it sounds like just a name game because it is a headliner. Like it just sounds weird to me that you kind of play with terms. But anyway.
Yeah, that was not my specific decision, but I think everyone agrees this is why fossil. I think fossil is on the one hand the highest priority one because it is, I think, very core to Ethereum's values. On the other hand, it is also in a way the most costly addition at this stage of the process because of the complexity. So I think people in general agree with you here. It's just that because it is so important, there's still the consideration of possibly just accepting the extra complexity cost. So that is basically exactly the conversation that we will be having, well, either on the ACDC or on ACDC and ACDE, depending on how people feel about this. I don't think we have time today. We have 4 more minutes, so I don't think we have time today to go into fossil on the merits discussion. So the next discussion on it will definitely be on ACDC. So go over there and join if you want to participate. And then maybe, unless there's more opinions now, we can offline discuss whether we also want fossil be discussed on next ACDE call in 2 weeks. One more process point then, and I don't think we will have time for anything other than process. In 2 weeks on ACDE, that is during the week of DevConnect. I know that many people are not attending DevConnect this year anyway. My suggestion would be to go ahead and continue the conversation in 2 weeks. As we said, that would then be the time where we, for the first time, would start to make individual decisions. So go through the DFI candidate list and possibly DFI EIPs, go through the CFI candidate list, possibly CFI EIPs. Of course, that only makes sense if people feel comfortable that we will have at least anything approximating an ACDE quorum in 2 weeks. So I wanted to just get a temperature check on this. Are people okay, comfortable with basically moving ahead with this plan and continuing the conversation in 2 weeks, or is this an issue for people? Or maybe let's put it this way. The default would be in 2 weeks, we continue with this plan as is. If people have strong objections to this, then in the meantime, offline on Discord, go and please voice that, because yes, otherwise you will basically come back in 3 weeks and there will have been decisions. And because Manabas had the comment in chat, I think not this coming ACDC, but we have discussed whether potentially we might be able to repurpose any of the other ACD related calls to basically extend the ACDE discussion space. But this would not be relevant in this coming 2 week cycle yet. We have 2 more minutes. I think, are there any specific process related things we need to discuss? Okay, otherwise, we did have one last agenda point, which was the welding the steel. Just a quick question for anyone from the steel team. Obviously, we're at the very end of the call. Is there something you want to give us, like a 1-2 minute summary of this topic, or would you rather wait for an ACDE at a future point where there is more room? Although, fair warning, this might take a while.
Hi, I can give just a quick update. We also kind of have a blog post out for this, so we can kind of link that for anyone who's interested in more details. So yeah, so a couple of weeks ago, we had announced that we are doing the weld, which is putting our two repositories together. So this is basically just an update on that, and happy to announce that we have completed it. So the execution spec test code has been moved into execution specs. So I mean, there are a lot of benefits for doing this. Everything has been like kind of updated in the blog post. You can kind of take a look. It kind of for the EELS developers and the client developers, this doesn't change anything. But for testing developers, there are a few minor things that change, and most of it is like a more positive developer experience. Again, I've kind of highlighted everything in the blog post. I would have loved to, if you had more time, go over some of the changes, but they are minor enough that you can just take a look at it. And if you have any questions, just reach out to us.
Sounds good. And then still related, one last comment. There was also, I linked it on the agenda. There is a issue where the Steel team is assessing complexity of PFI DAPs, and I hope that the CFI candidate list from today's call will be helpful in helping them guide the prioritization of which APs to look at first. But if you want to give impact to this directly, I also linked it in chat, so have a look there. And with that, I think that's the end of today's call. Thank you all very much with sticking with this. This was a lot, and I hope we made some progress. And yes, see you all in 2 weeks.
Thank you.